I've gotten this issue of the paper today. I didn't want to advertise.
It's 6 o'clock, call the meeting to order. Please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My normal speech, if you have a cell phone, please either mute it or turn it off, please. Thank you. Payroll treasurer warrants. Payroll warrants for January 11th and January 18th.
Move the warrants of January 11th and January 18th, 2009.
I'll second.
All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Accounts payable warrants for January 15th and January 22nd.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Thank you. Approval of minutes for January 8th, 2019. Is there any corrections, omissions, problems? If not, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 8th of 2019 as written.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We have no special presentations or awards. We do have 2 committee appointments. Jason Putnam to the Planning Board and Stephanie Miles to the Conservation Commission.
I'll move those appointments as read.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Next is a public hearing to review and discuss possible amendments to the town's parking ordinance, clarify the overnight parking and daytime parking in the municipal parking lots. Can I have a motion to begin the public hearing?
I'll move we go into a public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we have the ordinance in front of us, the changes that have been made. I was kind of taken back by this. I know, Chief, you did a great job. You did great. But I thought we were going to be discussing just the parking lot, the winter parking. That's what I was under the impression. As far as, because I have a lot of questions on this, when you're talking Water Street, so many feet, like parking is prohibited on the west side of Water Street, starting at the curb 160 feet south on east side of Water Street. How many parking spots is that, are we talking?
I have no idea. I think a lot of the footage and stuff came from the old ordinance. I didn't go out with a tape measure and do all that. So basically, all that happened here was we just cleaned up the old ordinance.
Okay.
But as far as the parking lot, I felt before I could answer any questions or do anything about the parking lot, I figured the town had to decide what they wanted to do with the parking lots. I mean, it's hard for me to make recommendations not knowing what you want with the parking lot. I think the first thing's going to happen is those signs need to come up. The 24-hour signs.
I think that's the main issue, is the signs on the parking lot. I'm going to speak for myself and not the board here. But I wouldn't want to see anything done with any of the parking downtown until after MDOT is done with their project. Then we take a good, hard look at the parking lots, maybe designate some for permit parking, some for employee parking. I don't know, but I think, in my opinion, we have to wait until after MDOT is done with their project. Yes, Bob?
I agree, Judy, and these ordinance changes are complicated. They require not only a lot of thought, but there's quite a process involved in the change. And I think what we should do tonight, not that there's anything wrong with this work, and it can certainly, be used to make ordinance changes, but I really thought that what we were going to be talking about was about parking in that specific lot on Middle Street,
Right.
where the signs, I believe, have been kind of competing with each other.
Right. Was there, I know we just finished a big storm, was there any problem that you noticed down on the Middle Street parking lot as far as the town crew being able to plow?
I worked Sunday during the storm, and I didn't receive any complaints about any of the parking issues or anything like that.
Okay.
So I don't know if there was a concern.
I know it's an issue, and I know it's something we have to address. But again, I'm going to say, I think we need to wait until after MDOT is done with their project. And then look at each parking lot as it stands separately. And say, this is 2-hour parking, this is 24-hour parking, this is permit parking, however that the town at that, the board at that time wants to do. But that's just my opinion. Yes, Jim?
Everyone can hear me, got a loud mouth. I totally agree with what you suggested, Judy. I think it's definitely worth a longer study and consideration for the overall parking situation. But tied in with that is something else, and this all will feed to the comprehensive plan as well, what I'm about to discuss right now. But there's something that's tied to parking that we've not been addressing here. I attended a planning board meeting last summer after I read about a project that had been approved downtown earlier in the year that I was not in town when it was reviewed. But it was a multiple housing project that was allowed in the old CEI building, which is now 41 Water Street. And it got approved, and there was no reason not to approve it, but it was changed from an office structure into a 6-apartment residential structure with no requirements for off-street parking. Now, that was completely legal because our current zoning ordinances in this town, especially for Village 1, Village 2, have no requirements for off-street parking in any new construction or modification if it's for residential use, only for non-conforming structures. So there's a serious deficiencies in our zoning ordinances as well that need to be addressed as soon as possible, because we all know we've lost parking in this town due to the MDOT project, even with the additional parking lots that MDOT's providing. But that's 6 new occupational areas, and even if only 1 car per unit, that's 6 parking lot or street parking spaces taken up. And we're not also looking at potential B&Bs and Airbnbs that might be around town. A number of us, I think everyone's aware that they do exist, and they may not be off-street parking to accommodate such things. With residences and apartments that have been here forever, well, that's grandfathered. They're conforming to their use, and that's how it's been. But when we look forward to any changes in this town or new construction or modification, we need to address residential off-street parking as a requirement, I would think.
Thank you, Jim. You and I don't usually agree, but we do agree on this one. And I really think that once MDOT has completed their project, the town of Wiscasset has got to look at their zoning, their ordinances, the whole thing, and make some new rules or whatever we have to do and come out straight, looking good. Because I think this project down here is going to make Wiscasset, and I'm hoping it will. But we have to do our part. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lois Quantz. I'm one of the parking people in the Middle Street parking lot, and I didn't realize until I got all of this paperwork off of the line that there was this whole mishmash over streets and so forth. My understanding was that for whatever reason, the Middle Street parking lot has been targeted. I've lived there for 40 years and parked in that parking lot during the winter time. Over the years, I've sort of become the de facto parking lot attendant in terms of working with Ken Cooper, who is usually the one that's doing all of the cleanup in the downtown area. And he and I have worked together. I have said to him, Ken, tell me what I can do to make it easiest for you to clean this parking lot. And we've worked it out to the point where when somebody new comes, maybe in one of the apartments, and so they're using the lot to park, but they don't understand that we have a system, and they leave their car out in front so that Ken wants to scream and plow it out in the street. I go out and I put notes on people's windshields that say, in the wintertime, you must park in the back area of the lot, especially if there's a storm predicted, so that the whole front area can be cleared out with no problem. And then what Ken, and I spoke with him again yesterday because the lot was totally clear in this storm up front. And he said it was great. I came in 5 to 10 minutes and I had that whole area cleaned up. And I said, so now what else can we do to help make this easier? And he said, well, just get people to move out of their spaces in the morning or whenever the weather allows, so that when I come back through again, I can take care of the back of the lot. And that's what happened. I went off for the day, and when I came back, the back area of the lot was cleared. It's not been a problem, and so I guess I'm questioning why all of a sudden it's now a problem.
Well, I think it has to do with the signage, if I'm not mistaken, that's on there. One says, there's a sign that says 2-hour parking, and there's a sign that says 24-hour parking.
There, to my knowledge, there is no sign that says 2-hour parking in that lot. That
8
lot
hours.
has always been 8-hour parking, and it says 8-hour parking on the top part of it, and then at least the sign that's in the middle that I park in front of a lot of times. Then underneath says overnight parking 24 hours. And that lot has always been available to residents who do not have off-street parking on their own property. And as I say, we have tried very hard to work with the town crew to make it the easiest that we can for them, because we appreciate that and we understand that that's a privilege for us to be able to park there, and we have been grateful to the town to let us do that. If this prohibited parking becomes a reality at whatever point, I don't know where those of us who have no place to park on our property are expected to go to park our cars. You know, so that's what I wanted to speak to.
All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Only that the notice does say clarify overnight parking and daytime parking in municipal parking lots.
Right. So how are we going to, yes, ma'am.
Hi,
Please come up here and state your name.
my name is Jessie Rader, and I moved here about 1.5 years ago. And I am one of those types that need to have off-street parking in general, because I live on Main Street. And so when I heard that there might be some changes, I just hope that you take in consideration all aspects of what makes a little village. And so I've been very grateful. I actually walked up here today, and they take care of the streets, they take care of the sidewalks, and so I'm very grateful. But if you took away the parking, that'd be really huge.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, bye.
I was glad to comment. I was road commissioner here for 3 winters, and we never had a problem with that lot. I think Mrs. Quantz explained very well what Ken Cooper explained to me when he told me how that got done. And Ken's not afraid to complain if something's wrong, and he never complained that it wasn't working the way it was supposed to. We never had a car that needed to be towed out of there, and I honestly don't know if the police department ticketed anybody in that lot. It was a long time ago, but as long as the folks move their cars around the way they have been, to make it easy for the town crew, I don't think it hurts to let cars park there overnight. If it becomes an issue because people leave the cars there for extended periods of time, then that's not gonna work, but I don't know that that's been a problem. Have we heard from the road commissioner on this?
No. No, we have not.
Larry, Doug didn't bring up anything to you.
The only issue I've had since September with the parking lot is that trailer that was abandoned there. You know, during the week, I guess she used it on the weekends or whatever. But I think whatever, and that's why I didn't address the parking lots, because it's hard for me to address the parking lots not knowing what the town wants to do with the parking lots. But I think whatever we come up with for an ordinance ought to be community friendly, because I don't want tow vehicles. But the only issue, I mean, Public Works has never called me because they had a vehicle in their way. Now, I've been on Middle Street during a snowstorm where I could see where the plow was plowed around the vehicle, but it ended up being one of the cooks that came in at, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning at Treats, and as soon as I spoke to her, she didn't realize it was storming that bad, and she went right out and moved her vehicle. But I think, as far as the ordinance goes, if we come up with something that's community friendly, I think that's what we gotta come up with. And I'd be more than happy to, to look at whatever you guys suggest me to look at, as far as coming up with something. But like Judy said, maybe wait till after the project and then see what's there.
Thank you.
But I haven't had any issues with plowing and stuff like that Doug's complained to me about.
Thank you. Kim?
A friend just texted me and said, could everyone please use the microphone, especially you, Judy, because she's having a hard time hearing. Okay. sorry.
Mine's on.
Okay.
I guess I didn't have it down far enough. There we go. Now you can hear me. Yes, Catherine?
I think the chief just came up with the key word, community-oriented, community kept in mind as far as the parking lot. And as Ben pointed out, I thought we were just really dealing with the sign to make it more user-friendly and less confusing. That was the mission of my suggestion back then. And I think everybody's correct about waiting until after
I'm thinking
DOT is
at this point, let's just wait till the project's over with. Let everything stay the way it is, status quo. If they have no issues with the plowing, people are moving their vehicles, I don't see to make a big deal of it right now. That's just my opinion. Yes, ma'am.
Actually, Judy, I was the owner of that lovely trailer that caused so much commotion.
Okay.
And on my defense, my daughter is about to finish college, and I downsized from a very large house into an apartment so we could be closer to her internship. And I moved this lovely little town not realizing there was such a big commotion about the changes of DOT. So I, in the summertime, was moving the trailer but being kind to always park it back in a place that was not taking any space. And therefore, I was not aware, because summertime, I worked my bejesus off to put her through college and to also get through the winter. And so I was then given a little note that it was a comment at a town meeting and that I had no time but to move it or I'd be towed. And I was beside myself, to be actually honest. I registered the trailer in my car here in the town. Someone could have easily asked, hey, you're new to the area, how's it going? Instead it was, oh, you gotta move it. And luckily, my new mechanic up at 27 Johnny's Auto, I said, I'm beside myself. I won't have time to go move it to my property in Freedom. I just won't have time. So he said, well, just park it up near my spot. And I did come to the town office and ask about the law and what I could do and try to explain what I was in the process of doing. So I was the trailer.
Okay. Well, thank you.
So you have to remember, if you're really wanting to have residency in a small little village that doesn't already have much parking, and it's a hardship to live when you have to bring everything down the stairs, all the way down until you have to be kind to those that are really trying to make it still livable on Main Streets. So please keep that in consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else? Can I have a motion to come out of the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, so we're gonna go status quo?
Great.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Public comment. At each regular selectman meeting, there will be time devoted to any resident or taxpayer of the town of Wiscasset to address the selectmen regarding any item that is not on the agenda for that meeting. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. Is there any public comment? Yes, Bill.
Bill Maloney, excuse me, Federal Street. I just wanted to announce that I'm passing a petition around for community development specialist, which would be part-time planner, part-time economic development. And after the meeting, I'll be here with the clipboard if you'd like to sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Peter Eaton. I live over on Federal Street. This is part of the package that we got on the parking and so forth. One section was regarding fines for traffic violations, and in terms of community relations and community first, it seemed to me that finding someone $500 for being too close to a hydrant and only giving them 2 days to make that payment was not something that was going to bring more people to Wiscasset. It seemed to me that most of the people who might be parking illegally would be from out of town or out of the area and here shopping and trying to help the economy in Wiscasset. And if they found that they had to respond within 2 days to a ticket and pay $500, or if not, within 10 days, be summoned from court, it would be unlikely that they'd come back to Wiscasset and want to do more business. It just struck me as something very odd in the program.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's keep going. Department head or committee chair. Department head monthly reports. Any comments on those? Yes, Kim.
I just wanted to point out, I'm sure everybody read it, but the, as of, I think it was January 2nd, in the transfer station, the fee for a single stream has changed from $5 a ton to $125 a ton. And so that's something for us all to keep in mind with next year's budget, because the numbers are going to change, I think, pretty radically.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, Kim.
I actually saw the same thing in the supporting documents, and I was pleased to see that there was a kind of middle ground there, that there were ways in which they could make up some of that difference. But I was wondering if there's anything else that can be done.
That would be a good conversation to have with the transfer supervisor.
So I talked to him, and I don't want to go on and on, so just kick me, Ben, and just shut up. But the kids at my class at school actually did a project about recycling, and so they collected all the garbage from 10 classrooms over a 3-week period. They weighed it every day, and then they opened up the garbage, dumped it on the desk, pulled out all the recycling, and weighed it again. And what we learned is that we were throwing away tons of recycling. It was really expensive, and we made a big bulletin board, like how many, the weight of so many African elephants in recycling is going into the landfill. And we talked about how much money this was costing the town. And then we went to the transfer station and we talked about it there. And sadly, the market for recycling is really, it's more than reduced, it's pretty much gone. So I guess China used to buy a lot of the recycling from our country, and they don't anymore. And so there is one bright spot, and it's in the supporting documents. It's this place up in Hampton. I can't remember what it's called. And they have this, they're going to have this type of incinerator where you can just burn whole garbage bags, and then any big plastic that's inside it will be somehow like siphoned out and will turn into like a reusable resource. I don't know that much about it, but that's the thing that's in there that would end up costing us $70 a ton.
Right. Well, what I was wondering, actually, Americans are pretty lazy recyclers. I mean, in other countries, they do a pretty good job of separating, and I'm wondering if maybe there's an alternative to our lazy single stream that nobody wants anymore.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I actually love our Wiscasset transfer station. I lived in Camden Rockport and we did have to separate. And they had a whole different system that I find that Wiscasset, you're covered. You can easily get into the dumpster. You can easily get your recycling done. But most of all, I think maybe if you stress about the composting, because I did buy a couple of yards of that beautiful compost that is made at the other transfer station. That's only $23 a yard. So where does that money go? Does that stay in the town?
It's a county operating.
Okay, so then maybe what you should start to think about is how much of the stuff, the recyclable material that you guys are donating, or do you pay for that? Is the town paid for that?
I don't know.
Because I do know good compost that's organic matter is very expensive now. So I was very, very happy, and the man that was over there explaining everything had a garden to show. He had potatoes that he was growing. It was fabulous, and that was probably the first time I felt like I was in the community. And if you're talking about community, that was like the best encounter I've ever had. We're just going to go with my trailer to get some beautiful compost for $23 a yard. And that was affordable. And so maybe, I know that we had, even not in just this state, but other states that were having issues because it costs too much to recycle now than what it's worth. And so with that thought, and knowing our consciousness of how much could be recycled, maybe focusing a little bit more on like a spring cleanup day, showing how important composting is, and how maybe making paper bags as their bucket to just put into that, because there's only 2 trash cans full of vegetable matter, and then you have tons of trees and leaves and twigs and such over in that other bin. And if that's then being taken to the county to make into a compost at $23 a yard, $3 a bag, I don't know, that's math.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let us go on. Unfinished business. Comprehensive Plan Ad Hoc Committee process. Kimberly.
So I met last week informally with Mary Ellen Barnes just to talk about where we are with the ad hoc committee that we as a board had agreed to her putting together at our last meeting 2 weeks ago. And we went over some ideas and we looked at the book and we thought about maybe, I'm not going to say too much because she's really the expert, so I'm going to defer to Mary Ellen, but she put together some materials she's going to pass around. And I know that there is a number, a loose budget number that we should maybe stick in the back of our minds for budget season. And so I wanted to bring that out tonight too.
I apologize, I ran out of time, so did not pass this to Marianne or Judy earlier for approval here. So last time, as Kim mentioned, we were talking about maybe creating, last time we were talking about creating maybe an ad hoc committee, and after Kim and I talked, we thought, well, why don't we just try to go for the whole thing, try to create a full-time comprehensive plan committee, and present a budget proposal for you now because you're about to start your budget season. So basically what I've suggested is something that's tried and true in other communities, and I know you know thousands of people in this community. And so I think there needs to be a process of maybe talking amongst yourselves and looking at possible candidates to serve as co-chairs, either a chair or co-chair. I know in our past experience, it always is great to have somebody who's totally enthusiastic about comp planning and sees the value in it, and also is pretty good at organizing a group of folks. I guess I would recommend, just based on what I presented here today, a committee of 10 to 15 people. If you get much bigger, it gets messy, harder to manage. But we always also like a lot of input. So I've laid out a couple other ideas for how you can really tap into a number of people. And we know from looking at Damascotta or Booth Bay Harbor that asking people personally is the way to get to a yes. But so I thought that at least at the beginning of comp plan sort of challenge, a comp plan mission, that the group, all these meetings would be open to the public, would take on reviewing the current comp plan, which is 2008, look at the state's requirements for comp plans, take a look at some of the good comp plans that are being adopted now, in the last couple of years, and then figure out, and this is very important because I can speak a little bit from Westport, bring in from the beginning a variety of viewpoints from around the town, because you really want at the end the plan, yes, it's going to have updated data and updated objectives and a lot of issues that you want to try to deal with, but you want to make sure everyone's been heard. So doing surveys of residents, having fun events at the rec center, the school, or walking around the downtown or some other area like Chewonki or Mason Station, really engages people in some of the issues that you have. And I also think the town is significantly large enough that you might want to look to make sure you've got people represented from all over the town. So I kind of just listed for you in a rough description the 6 neighborhoods that were represented in the last plan in terms of some of the focused land use planning work. And again, I'm a big believer in big democracy here, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to contribute. It's your town departments, you've got a lot of skilled people, your committees are a bunch of dedicated town volunteers, and then you've got organizations from Chewonki to Morris Farm, Garden Club, Yacht Club, Riding Club, Gun Club, and the many others. So I think this is a really rich town, and I know it's going to take a little bit more time to sit down and start with who can serve as chair or co-chair. And then on the second page there, I'm recommending for your consideration for this year's budget season a budget of $20,000. And I think Kim and I kicked around different ways of approaching the comp plan. You can do it all yourself, right? You can have 10 or 15 or 20 people writing chapters, researching topics. Somebody has to organize it, and I know that the RPC is willing certainly to do the transportation chapter. We'll get compensated a bit by DOT for that, and I can provide basic economic data that will make you smile, because we cover a lot of different topics with that. But if you're going to do the volunteer approach, I still think you need a few $1,000s for survey work, for maps, for printing. I think I worked with John on the Booth Bay Harbor plan some years ago, and we went through draft after draft. So I think if you're going to use a town or a committee approach, you're going to need to have some dollars for printing and map expenses. And then I thought if you were to go all out and go to a consultant to do 90% of this by a consultant, you're looking at more than $40,000. So I thought the $20,000 figure would do 2 things. Give your committee some spending money, and also allow you, if that's all you wanted to do, would be to contract with a planning consultant who could really sit down with the committees at key moments in time when you're sorting through trying to balance out different goals, and when you're trying to fit your goals into your town budget, and maybe when you're looking at competing land uses in certain towns. And so we have seen the benefit of having a consultant come in to really facilitate the future land use plan and trying to balance off your goals. And that could be just a short-term thing like $10,000 or $15,000. So that's a kind of, I think $20,000 would sort of really get you started and be a good set aside for this year. I mean, I know we haven't had a great thorough discussion from what you'd like to do, but I think $20,000 at this point in terms of your budget season would be a good request.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions?
Oh, thank you, Mary.
Do you have any comments? I mean, Kim and I were just wanting to keep this moving forward here, getting a process going. That's something that you'd like, but I also want to just convey my sense that we've got a lot of townspeople in town.
How do you suggest we draw these talented people to the committee?
I'd like to suggest that you folks start with looking at some possible chairs of the committee, because that would be really key. And then, again, I'm honored to know many people in town here, but you know many, many more, and I think it would be great to sit down and see among the neighborhoods, among the organizations and the issues that you see coming forward here, that you identify a list of 10 to 20 people or 30 people, and then we can go from there in terms of sensing whether we could have small meetings and talk with folks about the challenges of this, whether they'd like to take it on. But I kind of would defer to you folks to look at some leadership first,
Okay.
to know that you've got that.
Okay.
And I'm certainly happy to have myself or Bob, or we've just hired a new county planner who will take Bob's place in a little bit, to come down and talk with us about sort of the first couple meetings or so. We're certainly happy to sort of help to kick this off. I know there's a lot of details here, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to echo what Mary Ellen said and then add that, I mean, we all understand how important, right, having the comprehensive plan is. For one reason, we need it for a lot of grants, right? So if we don't have an updated comprehensive plan, a truly updated one, then we won't qualify for a lot of grant money that exists. And then another reason, I would love to have the feeling that we knew where majority of the people in the town, like what direction we wanted to go in. And there are big questions that have been kicking around for the 12 years that I've lived here that I feel like are unanswered, and it would be great just to get sort of a cross-section of people from our community together in a room with a professional who could lead that session, just to get a sense of our direction, so we had a plan and it would help us in the future.
I know there's some of us that could look at data all day long, but we could just look at the goals and objectives, which is the back part of the comprehensive plan, which is the more interesting work that was done 10 years ago. But we've been through a recession, and we're in the middle of a DOT project, and we've got some interesting discussions around the school and the town budgets. So I think it's very timely, and as Kim said, community development block grants, land and water conservation grants are affected by, you can perhaps be not eligible to submit, or be minus points be taken off of your applications if you don't update your plan. So anyways, it's also good to gather people together. You've had a lot of new residents moving in lately, so.
Yeah.
But I see some volunteers, I believe, in the audience here, so. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, would you like to be the chairman of that committee?
No. I just always imagined Mary Ellen would be the chair of that committee.
I have to live next door, too far away.
I don't know, maybe. Can I think about that?
Let's think about it. Okay.
I don't know if I'm smart enough to do that or qualified enough, but we can think about it.
Okay, let's think
All
about it.
right, maybe we'll come back to it.
Okay.
But not, I don't want to wait too long, because
No.
I would love to see this really
No,
happen.
it's on our radar. There's several things on our radar. Okay, new business. Discussion and introduction of interim town manager. As you know, Marion is leaving. This is her last select board meeting. Her last day of work will be February 1st. The board met. We had a good, healthy discussion amongst us. We will, at some point, be advertising for a town manager, but we're taking it slow. There are things right now that are on the burner that we have to concentrate on. We have our budget that has to be done, the comp plan has to be done. We have 3 union contracts that have to be negotiated. So we're going to take our time, and we're not going to rush into anything. That was the consensus of the entire board. We did meet with Mr. John O'Connell from Booth Bay, and he has decided that he would like to be our interim town manager. John will begin work February 4th, and he will take over the reins. John, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with the Board of Selectmen. I have worked before for the board 20-something years ago as an interim, very, very short term. And I'm looking forward to working with the community and for the community. Lots of things to do. No chance of being bored.
No.
Not at all.
Not at all. And anyway, I'm looking forward to getting to work, and I would also wish Marion the very, very best in that cold northern place.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard, John.
Welcome aboard.
Yes, welcome, John.
We'll put you right to work, February 4th. Okay, the next one is our monthly financials. HM Payson statement of account and department monthly expenses. Departments seem to be doing really good, staying on track.
This is here, do you have any questions?
Any questions from the board regarding anything?
Yeah,
Yes?
I realize it's just 1 month, but between November and December, the reserve funds dropped 600,000. How does that affect us as far as doing the capital improvement plan for this year? Is it too early to tell?
If you follow your investment policy, the formula that you use ends with figures as of December 31st of last year. So that is the number that you would use. And I'll make sure that John has that formula, so, and usually Dylan calculates that for you. So you should be okay for the present time.
Any other questions? Okay. Adoption of Wiscasset Municipal Airport Rules and Regulations. Mary?
You've seen this before, and this evening we have two members of the airport committee here. They've spent a lot of hours working on this, have sent it to the FAA. I guess we received their blessing, right? So I'm going to let Steve speak to it, because he is more familiar with it than I.
All right, and not to begin by correcting you, we actually have 3 members of the committee here, Rachel, and Jack, and myself.
Oh, I always think of Ray as planning board. Sorry, Ray.
And I'm Steve Williams. I am the chair of the Wiscasset Airport Advisory Board. And what we've brought before you is rules and regulations. We believe this will provide for a safe, orderly, and efficient operation of the Wiscasset Airport. It's going to apply to all users, not only the pilots, but passengers and also the general public when they're on the airport grounds. Just a brief history of this. We've had it, been working on it for about a year. Been gone through it page by page, line by line, and pruned it for the Wiscasset Airport. As Marion said, it has passed through the FAA's hands. They've given it their blessing back around the first of this year. You'll see it consists of about 28 pages. There's really only 10 pages of regulations. There's another 18 pages that are airport diagrams, and also there's a glossary of aviation terms in there which will be useful. Once this is approved, the committee will go to work on a sister document, which is entitled Minimum Standards, and that deals with commercial operators. At this point, I'd really turn it over to my committee member, or Jack, to answer any more specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Herb?
Hi. Good evening. It's hard to believe the airport's been here since 1960 and we've never codified a single rule or regulation, but not unusual. The FAA, while this is not required, the FAA has been pressing a lot of airports around the country to adopt these policies, mostly to make sure that we remain in compliance with federal and some cases state standards. In this particular document, we took a look at a number of different items that have never been published. At one point, like the noise abatement procedures were published at one point in a federal document, but have since disappeared. We don't know why. So as Steve said, we took quite a bit of time going through this page by page, line by line, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. There's always something that's going to get added or deleted as we move forward. But I assume you've had a chance to look at it. If you have any questions for me.
I don't have any questions. What do you need from us? You need us to approve this? Is that
Well, we want to make sure it's an official document.
Okay.
Again, a lot of the policies in here have been in place, but they've never been written down. For instance, noise abatement.
policies on visitors to the airport, who can go where you can drive a vehicle, things of this nature. So you just decided to put it all in writing and make it official, and you are responsible for the airport as the Board of Selectmen. So we wanted to make it as official as we could.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want a motion?
Yes, we need a motion to adopt and approve.
I will make a motion that we adopt and approve the Wiscasset Municipal Airport Rules and Regulations as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The easiest part.
It was a lot of hard work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Town managers report.
Well, as most of you know, this is my last meeting as manager for the town of Wiscasset, and I want to thank the board for the 4.5 years. I've had the pleasure of working with some of you, new and repeated, and also for the residents. And I'm glad that John's here this evening because my transition notebook is only up to 30 items. So I will have a document put together that has all of the outstanding items and the documents that go with them. One of the challenges when I came was locating some of these documents and what the projects were and what was outstanding. So I've been working on that, and I think that you'll find it very helpful. I will also provide a copy of the document for the board. So you might use it as a master list to add to for those things that you may want to move forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other board business? Before we adjourn, I just want to remind the board, February 5th, we have a select board meeting. Also, February 13th at 5 o'clock, we have a workshop on unpaid property taxes. So, in case you forgot or didn't put it on your calendar.
Huh. Thank you.
Yeah, I just put it on mine today. So. And if that's all, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Thank you.
Yes, it was. Keep that.